Hello! Today we will be editing episode 105 of our Fallout New Vegas series. Episode 105 is the conclusion to the New World Parliament mod with Joshua. We had a lot of fun with that one, and we've got about an hour's worth of raw footage to work with here. And that sounds about right. 1 hour usually translates into one 15 to 20-minute episode once we've cut it all down and chopped it all up. There is a section near the end that we had to do a couple of times because there was a game breaking bug, so we had to keep on going through it until we fixed it. So we might have more of a dead section here near the end somewhere. We might be able to repurpose the audio at that point, but overall, I think this is going to be a good section to work with. Normally, before we've imported it into Adobe Premiere, we record the footage on OBS Studios. I used to use GeForce Experience, which wasn't bad, but on some games it really struggled. Particularly, I had a really bad section of Dragon Age Inquisition that GeForce Experience could not properly record. The inconsistent frame rate just really messes with GeForce Experience, and if you have a game you want to record, OBS Studios has been, in my experience, the much better experience. So definitely highly endorse OBS Studios for recording for game footage. The audio is usually recorded into Audacity. You can see we've got about 3 hours right here, which is what the original recording session was. We got episodes 103, 104, and 105 recorded at once, one long session. I've already edited episode 103 and 104, and episode 105 is what we're going to be doing today. Normally, after we do the audio recording, I will apply a compressed dynamics filter, and that's great for getting these loud parts quieter and these quiet parts louder, so you can hear us when we're barely audibly whispering, but when we're screaming, it's not blowing your ears off. This normally will just equal it out, just normalize it a bit, make it a bit more easier on the ears. And then after I've done that, I add an what do I call that? A noise reduction filter. Yeah, there's a noise reduction filter I can use, which gets rid of any background noise. I select a relatively quiet section of audio. So something like this, where once I play it, there's no audio ticks. It's just the normal background noise. Oop, there's a little tick there. So something like this. I take this section of audio, I use this for the noise reduction, and I reduce it across the entire thing. That just gets rid of any background noise. And this whole process takes about 30 minutes. I take 10 minutes to do the compressed dynamics filter, 10 minutes to do the noise reduction filter, and then 10 minutes to export the audio. So this whole process of managing the audio takes about half an hour, which is not terrible. And then we import both the footage from OBS Studios and the edited Audacity footage into Adobe Premiere, which has been the program I've been using for quite some time. I know there are other programs out there, but I've gotten so familiar with Adobe Premiere that this is just the one that I've been using, and I'm probably going to use it for quite some time. It doesn't have motion tracking, as far as I can tell, which makes adding some of the subtitles a lot more difficult, but it's been a very solid program, and I'm pretty good at typing in the keyboard commands to go through these things really quickly. Once I've brought the footage into Premiere Pro, I've got the video and the audio brought in by OBS Studios and the audio brought in by Audacity. It takes a while for the program to import it, so I just wait for it to do that. It takes about 5 or 10 minutes. And then I make the audio a lot louder. I increase the audio gain by 15 decibels, and that usually puts it on par with the audio from the New Vegas game. Sometimes if I'm recording other games, I have to adjust the audio for that as well, make it louder or quieter depending on how quiet or loud the game has been. But for New Vegas, I normally don't have to do too much with it. It's pretty much set exactly where I need it to be. Once it's all imported into Premiere Pro, I also take the time to make a proxy file for the OBS footage because when I'm editing all this footage and adding subtitles and some visual effects, it really starts to drag down the processing on the program. But if I make a proxy file, that usually makes it easier to work with, a lower quality proxy file. So right now I've already got one made, and you can see that it's going to change this to a little lesser quality, which improves the playback while I'm editing. Making the proxy file usually takes about an hour or two, so usually I try and let that happen overnight because I don't want to have my computer down for 2 hours. But if I need to do some editing, that's how I do it. I usually do it with a proxy file so it doesn't stutter as much while I'm editing it, while I'm trying to do playback. And now that we have brought everything into Adobe Premiere, it's time for us to do the actual editing. This is going to take some time to give us a rough cut, take this 1 hour footage down to about 20 or 25 minutes. Just make sure we got all the important bits we need. This is going to take some time, but we'll see how long it takes for us to get this 1 hour footage edited down. It's now 3 hours later. It took me 3 hours to edit this 1 hour footage, which is longer than I normally like, but it had 2 hours to do a rough cut from front to end. And then I went back through and did another pass over, did some finer cuts, took out some things that I didn't think were as funny, and now we're down to a little under 20-minute file, which is a good place to start with. You can see here that some of the audio cuts don't match up with the video cuts, and the audio cuts from the game don't always match up with the audio cuts from our audio. That's because I do a lot of creative editing. If we're telling a long story and maybe we're having a brain fart or we're just telling it very slowly, I'll cut out the space in between so it's more fast paced, and then I'll put it all close together, make it look like it's not distorted or janky. It's just gotta look nice. We've also had some problems with the companions that we've had for these two mods. Joshua and Mercury, they have barks that they do every minute, it feels like. Every minute they say something. They say one of their 5 voice lines, and it can get kind of repetitive. So I have to do some video editing, replace the game's replace the game's audio with some other part of the game's audio, just so it's not as distracting. There's a lot more editing that goes into this than it might seem. In every episode, I do some creative edits like this. You can tell that this section of video is playing at negative 100%. That means it's playing backwards. And most people wouldn't notice this. I think I'm pretty clever with this. But if I'm running around or if Zach is shaking the camera, it's just really not pleasant to look at, or it'll be difficult for me to add subtitles to, or for whatever reason, I'll just cut out a section of video and copy this section of video, paste it here, and play it in reverse. You can't really tell unless someone points it out, or maybe if there's a propeller spinning in the background or clouds floating. And there's nothing that tells you that there's one way of motion, then it'll be an easy trick to get away with. So you can tell that it transitions quite nicely. Right there, there's a transition cut. It's going from front to back. There's no real way to tell. So that's just a creative trick I use to make the game look a little smoother when we're doing the editing. And there are also times where I'm speeding up the game or slowing down the game. Sometimes I'll slow the game's video down to 85% instead of 100, so it's a little easier to follow. Again, if Zach is shaking the camera around, or if I'm walking around and it'll be difficult for me to add subtitles to a character that's running around screen, I'll slow down the screen or I'll move the audio up or back 5 seconds just so it's not quite so jarring. It's very difficult to read subtitles that are flying around the screen, and it's also a lot of work, so I try and avoid that when I can. Here's another section where I did a pretty standard edit. There's a part where we enter a shack, David's shack, and then our companion Joshua starts barking a line at us. But during the original recording, he started saying his line before the video had even loaded, before the interior of the building had loaded. We were still at the loading screen when he started talking. It was fading out of black, and that's not what I want. So what I did was I moved the audio further back, and then I slowed the video down about 80% so it roughly lines up. The lines that he's saying line up with him talking. Not perfectly, but it's definitely a lot less jarring. So you can see for a split second we're in the interior, and then Joshua starts talking. I do a lot of little edits like that, little things that really don't even think twice about, just things that make it look nice, make it feel nice. I got to think about this from the viewer's perspective because they're not playing with us, and I'm making a lot of very, very sharp cuts. Like I said, I do these cuts very frequently. Here's a part where we were talking to Joshua. He was giving us a one-on-one. He was talking, then he had a brief pause, and then he kept on talking. But during that brief pause, one of us tried to say something. I can see that we say about a 4-second bit of audio there, and that's okay, but because he only paused briefly, he kept talking immediately, and we were just talking over each other. So what I do is I do a creative edit. I take the section where he's quiet, I extend the video by, I just slow it down by half. It's at 55% speed here. And here we have audio that I took from somewhere else, just so we have the same background ambient audio. And it should play pretty smoothly. You shouldn't be able to tell that the video is slowed down. There's no cuts here or anything. You might be able to hear the tick from the audio there. Nope, that tick's still there. That's simple enough. I just take this, cut it, and paste it. and now you shouldn't hear the tick from the menu popping up. So it should be good for him to say his line, then one of us chimes in with something, and then he keeps on going. And now that we have this 20-minute episode, 19 minutes and 39 seconds, we are going to start adding subtitles, and that's going to be quite the time consuming task. We're going to add Zach's subtitles first, since Zach's subtitles appear at the bottom. They're hardly ever flying around the screen, so they're pretty easy to add. There's just a lot of them. Zach is a very talkative guy, so there are a lot of Zach subtitles that I need to add, but I don't have to do any moving them around on the screen or anything. So I'll do Zach's subtitles first. Then I'll do the NPC's subtitles because those are usually pretty stationary as well. And there's not a whole lot of them. Sometimes it can be sometimes it can be an episode without any NPC subtitles at all, although it's pretty rare. And then we'll do the mic subtitles because those are the most time intensive. And we have just finished adding Zach's subtitles, the blue subtitles at the bottom of the screen. That took us 2 hours and 20 minutes from start to end without a break. So we have been working on this thing for about 6 hours today. We're going to have to take a break and maybe get a little bite to eat because I'm probably going to spend the entire day dedicated to doing nothing but working on this one episode. But I think this has been pretty good so far. I haven't run into any snags with this episode, putting in Zach's subtitles. There's usually not too many problems with that. I've rearranged things. You can see the time is now 19:16. I've added little bits here and subtracted little bits there. So it's even out to still be roughly under 20 minutes, just barely. It is now 2 hours and 10 minutes later, according to my timer. I've had this running for a while. It took me longer than I thought to put in the NPC subtitles, but then again, this is the last episode. There was a big final confrontation with the antagonist. The protagonist had a couple of lines. I did a lot with the I did a lot of extra stuff this time around because there was some NPC interactions going on off screen, so I used a couple of different fonts. That always takes a little bit longer. And of course, the NPCs are moving around on the screen sometimes. Not when you're talking directly to them. Normally, if you're talking directly to them, it's pretty easy. You can just leave it in the one area. But if they're moving around, then sometimes you have to have the text track them. So the NPC text took 2 hours, and the Zach text took 3 hours, so a total of a little over 5 hours so far to add subtitles. But now I've got to do the mic subtitles, and that's probably going to take some time too. But it is, boy, I've been doing this all day. I did the raw editing in the morning. That took me all morning, and I got some lunch. Then I did Zach's subtitles, and now that I've done all the NPC's subtitles, I've spent a good portion of my day working on this, and I might just want to call it quits. It's 8 o'clock right now. I've spent the entire day, literally I've sat in this chair. As soon as I woke up, just sat right here and started working on this, and I'm still not done yet. I could, and I have, just worked all the way till midnight, but I think I'm going to take a break for now, maybe pick this up tomorrow. I've changed my mind. I've decided I want to finish this before I go to bed tonight. It's just who I am. I want to get things done so I don't have to worry about them anymore. If I got an outstanding task, I'm going to take care of it, and so I'm going to finish this before I go to bed tonight. It looks like this is going to take me about 2 hours as well. I'm getting pretty close to the end of adding Mike's subtitles. To do that, I normally just add the subtitles if I am on screen and the text is flying around. That can make things a little more difficult. So, for example, here, the text is going to start moving to the right to follow me. You can see it's sliding to the right there. Rewind it, go forward. Text follows me. I put the keyframes every 3 frames, I think. So I'm editing this every 3 frames, and then it just adds in between keyframes automatically. So I don't have to move it frame by frame, but I do a lot of frame work every couple of frames. And if the text suddenly needs to sharply turn to the left, or if the movement of Zach's head stops suddenly, I'll definitely put a keyframe there. And it's a lot of work. Now, some people might ask why even bother having fully animated subtitles. And yeah, I've asked that question myself too. It's a lot of work. You can see that it's added on about another 8 hours of work for what is just a 20-minute video. And I suppose the reason is because the subtitles enhance the comedy, in my opinion. You could have no subtitles, and it'd just be a fine video. It'd be fine by itself. But it wouldn't have subtitles. Might be difficult to hear who's saying what. Sometimes the mod authors for these custom mods have difficulty with speaking. I have trouble with speaking sometimes, and sometimes it can be difficult to discern who's talking between me and Zach, so the subtitles really help with that as well. So that's what I prefer to have the subtitles on for. I don't like using the in-game subtitles. I don't like having subtitles on for Fallout New Vegas, and you can see that when we do have characters that are subtitled, maybe there are NPCs that don't have a voice and we give a voice to, and the subtitles will they will appear on the screen in the very small New Vegas font, which is sometimes difficult to read. But worse than that, they have 3 or 4 sentences squeezed into that dialogue box, which is fine normally, but if you're trying to tell a joke, it spoils the punchline of the joke. It lets you see the punchline coming 10 seconds before it's actually delivered. And that really ruins a lot of the hard work that the mod authors and even the vanilla game designers have put into the mod or into the game, because those jokes, like half of the jokes is the delivery. So I don't like having the delivery spoiled by the subtitles. But that's the dilemma. Do you go with subtitles and have the dialogue spoiled, or do you go without subtitles and then you got no subtitles? And if you have a difficulty hearing a sentence, or one of the NPCs is difficult to understand, you just don't have subtitles. This is why I add the custom subtitles. It's a lot of extra work, but I think it really does enhance the quality of the show. I think I've gotten better over time just by doing so many episodes of this, figuring out where subtitles are good and where they can and should be omitted, because not every line of dialogue that Zach or I or even an NPC says needs to be subtitled, because if we're talking over each other, then I have to pick who I'm going to subtitle, or if I'm going to subtitle any of them at all, or if I want to try and delete or separate some of that audio. Also, there are some lines which aren't important, and I like to leave out my subtitles, not just because they're visually distracting sometimes, flying around the screen, but because they're not all that necessary to hear. If you don't hear what I say, maybe that one line I'm saying isn't all that important. Zach doesn't follow up on it. No NPC plays off of it. It's really just kind of a throwaway line. Don't even bother subtitling it because it's just visual clutter at that point. So I've gotten better at discerning which subtitles are best left out. I think I'm getting better at that anyway. I know there are some programs out there that have motion tracking built in better, so I don't have to manually adjust the frames every 3 frames, do this and move it on my own. But honestly, the motion tracking isn't the worst part of my day. There are just a lot of subtitles for me to add. Hundreds of them. Just 200 for Zach, 200 for me, 200 for NPCs, and just typing it all in, spell checking my own work. That's probably the majority of my time adding subtitles. The motion tracking, yeah, it's tedious, but usually it's not the worst part. And I have just finished. That has taken me all day, but I have edited the entire video. Adding Mike's subtitles, my subtitles, has taken me a little under 2 hours, a little over an hour and 45 minutes. So, however long it took me to do the editing, the rough editing, I got 3 hours for the rough cut, then over 2 hours for Zach's lines, 2 hours for the NPC's lines, and about 2 hours for my lines. So that was a full day. That was a full day of work. I'm going to tally that all up, but that's quite a lot of hours. And now I'll be able to render this overnight. I'll go to File, Export, and I'll export the media as FOMP 105. FOMP 105 is our code name for Fallout New Vegas. It stands for Fallout Multiplayer, which was the original name for this series. But after too many comments telling me that it's clickbaity, I eventually acquiesced, and I admit, yeah, it's a little clickbaity. So we just call it Fallout New Vegas for now, and that's fine enough. I was originally going to have a joke set up. It was going to be a long con kind of joke that was going to be set up. We called the videos Fallout Multiplayer every day, and then around, I don't know, whatever episode, some episode in the future, one of us gets killed, and the name of the series becomes Fallout Single Players for a short time. That would have been the joke, but that joke's never going to happen now. Oh well. And exporting this file, it's going to take probably about 2 hours. Actually, no, this is probably going to take less than an hour. It's estimating about half an hour. Yeah, exporting this video file. It's a short video file, 20 minutes isn't that long, so it'll take about 20 minutes to render. Yeah, that sounds about fair. But again, that's just more downtime for my computer, so I won't be able to sit at this computer and do any work anymore, which is good because it's probably time for bed. Yeah, it's 11 o'clock and it is time for bed. I spent the entire day editing this. From dawn till dusk is how much time I spent editing this. I took a break, took a walk, and I got lunch, and I watched a couple of videos on YouTube, but I just didn't leave the house at all. It's a very unhealthy lifestyle, but I just really want to crank this work. If I've got work, if I've got raw footage to work with, I want to turn that raw footage into a finished product, and then I can just rest easy. I find it difficult to relax when I know I've got work that needs to be done. So if I've got work like this, yeah, I've got 5 episodes, and I pretty much just cranked them all out this week because I wanted to get these 5 episodes done so they'd be less of a burden on my mind. Hey, it's now several weeks later because I forgot about this file. Yes, the making of the videos file that I was working on. I completely forgot about it. Got started working on other things, and this totally slipped my mind. So I guess I'll just wrap it up now. Tell you about a couple more edits I do before I end this video. If it's dark out, like if I'm going into a cave or if it's a nighttime mission, I will artificially increase the brightness because otherwise it looks very dark, especially on mobile screens. It looks to be completely pitch black. So this is what the screen looks like after I've artificially brightened it. But if I get rid of that, that's what it looks like. And that's pretty dark. I'm sure it looks very much like a big black box on a mobile screen. So that's why I add the additional brightness and contrast. So it's a lot more. You can see what's actually going on now. A note about subtitles, I try and keep them to just 2 lines at most. It's best if it's 1 line of dialogue or two, but here we see there's 3 lines because it's a really long sentence without any pauses in between. And I try and avoid that if I can. In fact, if I see someone saying a long sentence and it would be 3 lines long, I'll actually try and insert a pause in between their speaking, just artificially add a pause. But sometimes it's not doable, and I do have to have a big dump of information. It's just something you have to deal with. Maybe if I used a smaller font, it wouldn't be 3 lines, but I like to keep the font a bit bigger, so even if you've got a visual impairment, you'd still be able to read it. When I'm adding subtitles for the NPCs, if they're in the vanilla game, I'll actually look up their subtitles. There's a Wikipedia or a Gamepedia thing. There, you could find the text file that contains every NPC's dialogue in the game. So even this NCR Trooper, I'm sure his dialogue is listed there too, and I would just copy and paste it. And the reason I do that is to try and avoid spelling errors, because when I'm typing all these things out, I have a tendency to mistype things. Sometimes you fat finger the keyboard, but usually copying and pasting it's not an issue. Of course, that's not doable if we're playing a mod or some content that's not vanilla, and of course our subtitles that's not listed anywhere, so I've got to type them all in. But NPC subtitles, I do have a little bit of a cheat there. Another note about subtitles, there's a lot of them, so many that it's quite easy for spelling errors to slip through. And I try my best to type smart. I try not to be stupid about it. I do all the subtitles, and then I watch the entire video from front to back very intently, looking for any spelling errors that slip through. If I catch any, I'll fix them and re-render them, and then I'll show the video to Zach. Zach might catch a spelling error or two, and if he does, I'll fix it and I'll re-render it, and then I'll upload it to YouTube, and I will post that video to the people on Patreon. We got some Patreon subscribers. They give a dollar a month to watch the videos a week early and ad-free, and sometimes they're kind enough to point out a spelling error that slipped past both of us, and if that's the case, before it goes public, I will take it down. I will fix the error, re-render it, and re-upload it, and hopefully that will not have any spelling errors in it. Even still, there are some that are very, very subtle, and they will slip through, and eventually someone will call me out on it. But for the most part, we're getting pretty good at not letting them slip through. It's not like I can take the video down after it goes public and fix it. I certainly don't want to have to do that. Sometimes when we're playing mods, stuff that's not in the vanilla game, it's difficult to hear what the mod author is saying, or I'm not entirely sure what they're saying. And if that's the case, I will literally go back into New Vegas, load it back up, turn on subtitles, and play through the game from start to finish, play through the mod from start to finish, just so I know exactly what they're saying, and then I will make the subtitles from that. It's extra work, but I want to make sure I got the subtitles correct. I'm not misrepresenting what people are saying. They put a lot of effort into it. Least I could do is be correct about what they're saying. And just between you and me, sometimes I cheat and look up an Al Chestbreach video because he's played through every single mod and he's always got the subtitles on. So I watch his videos sometimes to see what the NPCs are saying, and then I can add subtitles that way. So that saves me some time. I don't have to load up the game and play through it again myself. And in addition, I get to say I'm working while I'm actually watching an Al Chestbreach video. Tee. And I suppose one more thing I should mention is that thumbnails are important. It's the cover on the book. That's the first thing people see. So I will do what I can to make a good thumbnail for each video. Sometimes I can find a video frame that's good. I could maybe cut this out and this could be the corner piece and put the logo right here. But it's got to be visually interesting, not too dark. It's got to be distinct. Sometimes it's got to stick out, stand out. And if I can't find anything in the video files, I will load up the game and use the console commands to find a nice scene and take a picture or record a little bit of video footage. And I will use that scene to make a thumbnail because thumbnails are very important. So that about wraps up the video. I hope you enjoyed this look behind the scenes. Give a quick shout out to Bullet, who made the New World Parliament mod and actually made the second one recently. We'll have to go and play that one too because the first one was good, and I can't wait to see what he did with Joshua and the MPs. And he's actually been pretty active on our Discord channel and giving out mod tips. He's made a couple of mod tutorials himself. I might actually start watching those because I am interested in making my own mod eventually. I just never have the time, it feels like. Someday I will. And I'll probably watch his tutorials to make that happen. But until next time, my name is Mike, and this has been Fallout New Vegas, the behind the scenes look. Thank you for joining me.